It was 2:43 a.m. when my phone rang. I was in Geneva, halfway through delivering a keynote at a global health summit, barely 2 days into what was supposed to be the professional highlight of my year. I reached for the phone, expecting a time zone mix-up from a colleague. But instead, I heard the calm but urgent voice of an American consular officer. "Mrs. Coleman, we have your daughter." She was found unaccompanied near the central train station in Cracovia. She had no passport, no ID, and was visibly distressed. She claimed her name was Eliza Coleman. "Is that correct?" I froze. Cracovia. That name alone triggered alarm. A volatile Eastern European country currently under a Level 4 travel advisory from the U.S. State Department. Do not travel. Civil unrest. Political kidnappings. I sat up straight, heart thundering in my chest. "There must be a mistake," I whispered. "My daughter is in Connecticut. With her grandmother." "No ma'am," the officer replied. "She's here, alone, and she says she was left behind by her family. We need you to confirm she is a minor and authorize emergency protection." My hands began to shake. I could barely speak. I had kissed my daughter goodbye just days ago. She had been nervous but hopeful, trusting her grandmother's soft promise of a family visit. And now she was stranded in a foreign country, without documents, without support, and worse, without anyone who cared enough to look back. "My name is Vanessa Coleman. I am 36 years old, a communications director and a single mother. And what my in-laws did to my daughter broke something I will never forgive. This is the story of how I found out my family would rather lose my daughter than love her. My name is Vanessa Coleman. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and I work as a communications director for a nonprofit focused on maternal health and gender equity. On paper, I am composed, rational, strategic. My wardrobe is made up of white shirts and tailored navy trousers, my nails neatly filed, my life compartmentalized with military precision. But none of that matters when your child is lost in a dangerous country because the people you trusted most decided she didn't matter enough. I became a widow at 28. My husband, Daniel, died in a car accident on a fog-drenched interstate while returning from a client meeting. Our daughter Eliza was only 8. She didn't cry at the funeral. Instead, she clutched the camera he had given her for her birthday and sat on the front pew with it held tight to her chest. That camera hasn't left her side since. Eliza is 16 now, quiet, thoughtful, intensely observant. She wears her father's creativity in her bones, capturing beauty in overlooked corners through her lens. She's not loud, not athletic, not the type of teen who dazzles in social settings. She prefers libraries to parties and black and white photography to TikTok videos. She has anxiety, worsened by her father's death and worsened still by the subtle message that she was always too much for some and not enough for others. My late husband came from a high-achieving family. His mother, Diana Coleman, is a perfectionist to the core. A former classical pianist turned socialite, she lives in a sprawling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. To her, appearances are everything. And Eliza, soft-voiced, emotionally fragile, camera always in hand, was a blot on her porcelain image. Diana has never said she disliked Eliza. She never had to. It was in her size when Eliza struggled to make conversation at dinner. In the backhanded compliments about how artistic she was, said with that faint condescension only women like Diana have perfected. Then there's Melissa, my sister-in-law. Younger than Daniel by 5 years, Melissa lives in Manhattan and thrives in chaos. She has 3 children, all involved in at least 4 extracurriculars apiece. She's loud, stylish, and believes in tough love. To her, Eliza is coddled and oversensitive. Her words, not mine. She once said to my face, "If Eliza lived in my house for a month, I'd toughen her up fast." I tolerated them. For Daniel's memory, for Eliza's connection to her roots. Every holiday, I gritted my teeth through backhanded jabs and tight-lipped smiles. When Diana offered to watch Eliza during my conference in Geneva, I hesitated. But Eliza, still hoping for connection, said she wanted to go. "Maybe they'll finally like me," she said, not looking up from her camera. I should have listened to my instincts. Because the people who promised to care for my daughter took her out of the country, into a volatile region. Without telling me, and when she struggled, they didn't help. They left her, and I will never forgive that. The conference in Geneva had been planned for months. I was invited as a featured speaker to present a case study on communication models used during the maternal mortality crisis response in rural clinics. It was a career-defining opportunity. I arranged every detail with care, including Eliza's temporary stay in Connecticut. When Diana offered to host Eliza for the week, it felt oddly generous. She called me, her voice measured and sweet. "Vanessa, I know you're overwhelmed. Let Eliza stay with me. I'll take her to a few exhibitions, maybe visit the coast. She's old enough to handle a change in scenery." I hesitated. I reminded her of Eliza's anxiety and specific routines. Diana brushed it off. "She's 16, not 6. It'll be good for her to adapt. You're doing her no favors by wrapping her in cotton." Still, I said yes. Eliza wanted to go. She'd been trying so hard to fit in with them for years. "Maybe if I show them I'm normal, they'll stop treating me like glass," she'd whispered one night. It broke my heart that she believed she had to earn their love. I flew to Switzerland on Sunday. We FaceTimed twice. Eliza was subdued, but I assumed it was nerves. She said she was fine. On Tuesday morning, her texts stopped. No reply to my messages, no response to my calls. I texted Diana. She answered 6 hours later with a single sentence, "Everything's fine, Vanessa." "She's just tired." But something felt off. The silence stretched for another 24 hours. Finally, the call came. The American embassy in Cracovia said Eliza had been found wandering near a train station. She had no passport, no identification, and was visibly distressed. She'd been helped by a kind stranger, a local schoolteacher, who took her to the embassy. They told me Eliza had arrived in the country with her grandmother, her Aunt Melissa, and 3 cousins. But the group had traveled onward to a different city, leaving Eliza behind. She claimed they'd taken her passport, phone, and backpack for safe keeping and never returned. I felt a scream building in my chest. The idea of my anxious, introverted daughter left alone in a country experiencing violent political protests was almost too much to comprehend. Cracovia was on the U.S. government's Level 4 Do Not Travel list. There had been reports of tourists detained under false accusations, street-level abductions, and anti-American sentiment. The embassy officer informed me it was critical I come immediately to verify Eliza's identity and secure her extraction. I called Diana. No answer. I called Melissa. No answer. I called Gerald, my father-in-law, who usually stayed neutral. The call rang twice before going to voicemail. I dropped everything and took the first flight out. It took over 26 hours of rerouted legs, panicked layovers, and customs complications before I arrived at the U.S. Embassy compound in Cracovia. Eliza was there. She looked so small, curled up on a narrow bench in the embassy waiting room, her camera held to her chest like a shield. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen. When she saw me, she didn't speak. She just walked toward me, fell into my arms, and cried in heaving sobs that shook her shoulders. I wanted to rage, to storm into whatever lavish hotel Diana and Melissa were likely sipping wine in and scream until the walls cracked. But first, I had to stabilize Eliza. With embassy assistance, I retrieved a temporary passport for her, filed a full incident report, and submitted a request for investigation into her abandonment. We were placed in emergency lodging funded through the State Department's Crisis Response Initiative. Eliza didn't speak much. She flinched when doors opened. She asked to sleep with the lights on. She kept asking me if I was angry at her for causing trouble. It wasn't until 2 days later, after a soft breakfast in the embassy lounge, that she told me what had really happened. "They took my phone and passport right after we landed. Said it was for safety," she whispered. "Then Aunt Melissa said I was embarrassing them. I didn't know how to join the prayer circle. I didn't eat the fish at dinner. She said I was sulking, ruining the energy. Grandma said I could stay behind while they went to the monastery." They left her at a station stop with a tourist map and a bag of snacks. Melissa told her, "Just stay quiet and wait. Someone will come for you." No one came. Eliza waited 10 hours. Then she walked, crying, until a teacher spotted her sitting under an awning and offered help. I stared at my daughter, at her trembling fingers, at the faint bruises from where she'd clutched her camera strap too tightly. And in that moment, I made a decision. I would go see them. Not as the quiet daughter-in-law they always ignored, but as a mother. A mother who had come to remind them of what they did, what it meant, and what it would cost. They were staying at the Hotel Paladine, a 5-star resort perched on the hillside overlooking Cravavia's capital, a far cry from the dusty backstreets where my daughter had been left alone. I didn't tell them I was coming. I didn't knock. I asked the front desk to connect me to Diana Coleman's suite. When her voice answered, smooth and clipped, I said, "I'm in the lobby. I have Eliza. Come down, now." 10 minutes later, Diana appeared in the marble atrium, followed by Melissa, who wore oversized sunglasses and a scarf even though it was humid and cloudy outside. Gerald trailed behind, eyes darting. None of them looked surprised. None of them asked how Eliza was. "She's safe," I said, holding up my phone. In case that was unclear. Diana's lips tightened. "Vanessa, I don't think this tone is helpful." "Helpful?" I stepped forward. "You took my daughter into a country under active travel advisories. Without my consent. Without her passport. Then you left her alone. She was found by a stranger. At a train station. That's abandonment." She was being difficult, Melissa snapped, folding her arms. She refused to participate in any of the events. She sulked. She wouldn't even stand still for the family prayer. "You know how she gets. She gets anxious," I said, barely controlling my voice. "She needed reassurance. And you punished her for not pretending to be someone else. You took her lifeline, her phone, her passport, and then you stranded her." "Now hold on," Diana interjected. "We didn't leave her on the side of the road. We made sure she was in a public space. You left a 16-year-old in a foreign country without papers or a way to contact anyone," I said. "You had no plan to retrieve her." "Don't be dramatic." Melissa rolled her eyes. "She wasn't in danger. She could have been detained, kidnapped, or worse." Gerald finally spoke. "Vanessa, you're overreacting. We thought she needed a little space." I took a deep breath. "You thought she was disposable." There was a pause. Diana looked away. I pulled out my phone, swiped to video, and pressed record. "Say that again," I said. "Say she was just being difficult. Say you had no responsibility to protect her." Melissa's expression twisted. "You're recording this?" "You're damn right I am." "Turn that off," Diana snapped. "No, not until you look into a camera and explain why you thought it was okay to leave a child without documents in a dangerous country. A child you promised to care for. You're exploiting this," Melissa hissed. "I'm protecting my daughter. Something none of you even attempted." A silence fell. Then Diana said it. Words so cold, I'll never forget them. "Eliza doesn't belong here, Vanessa. She never fit in. We thought maybe this trip would finally make her part of the family. But she resisted everything. She's exhausting. You left her like luggage," I said quietly. At a train station. I ended the recording and walked out. Later that night, I sent the video to a trusted journalist friend who worked in advocacy reporting. She asked one question: "Are you sure you want to go public?" And I said yes. Within 12 hours, the video had gone viral across parenting networks and social media platforms. The phrase "they left her like luggage" was retweeted thousands of times. Advocacy groups reached out, outraged. Former acquaintances of the Colemans shared similar stories of elitism, cruelty, and cold detachment. But I wasn't finished. Back in Boston, I filed a legal complaint. With the help of my lawyer, I built a case around international child endangerment, emotional abuse, and custodial interference. Eliza was a minor. She was taken across international borders without proper documentation or my informed consent. Then she was abandoned. We compiled evidence: the embassy incident report, written statements from the teacher who found her, travel records, text messages, and emails. We even acquired airport footage showing Eliza being escorted out of customs without her backpack while Diana walked ahead. Melissa tried to get ahead of the scandal by giving an interview to a lifestyle podcast, painting Eliza as emotionally unstable and claiming they did their best. But the internet wasn't buying it. When the host asked if she had spoken to Eliza since leaving her, Melissa said, "There wasn't really time." The public outrage tripled. As court proceedings loomed, Diana's attorneys reached out with a proposed settlement, an apology letter, a private donation to a child therapy fund, and a promise to respect Vanessa's boundaries. I rejected it. We went to court. Inside the courtroom, Eliza sat beside me, fingers interlocked tightly. She didn't want to testify but agreed to submit a written statement about her experience. My lawyer read it aloud. In it, Eliza described sitting alone, not knowing if anyone was coming back, feeling unwanted, like she was someone they were embarrassed to bring home. At one point, I looked over and saw Diana weeping. But I didn't care, because crocodile tears don't undo betrayal. The judge ruled in our favor. Full legal custody remained with me, with an official protective order filed against Diana and Melissa. The court ordered them to pay all travel-related damages and mandated compensation for 2 years of therapy for Eliza. Diana's charitable board seats quietly disappeared in the weeks that followed. But the victory wasn't in the ruling. It was what came after. Eliza, slowly, began to heal. She started therapy twice a week and began journaling again. She applied to a competitive summer program in photography and won a scholarship. She even printed and framed a black and white photo of the Cravovian train station, captioned only with one word: survival. I stepped down from my nonprofit and launched something new, the Eliza Project. A mentorship and emergency support network for teens navigating family estrangement, especially those whose neurodiversity or sensitivity made them targets of emotional neglect. We raised $200,000 in the first 6 months. One afternoon, Eliza asked me, "Do you think they ever cared about me?" I didn't lie. I think they cared more about control than connection. She nodded. That's what I thought too. We were walking along the Charles River that day. She had her camera. I had nothing but time. And in the way she laughed, softer than before but real, I knew one thing for sure. They may have left her behind. But I never will. In the months that followed, the intensity of the scandal subsided, but its impact lingered like a shadow trailing us wherever we went. Strangers recognized us at farmers' markets, in cafes, sometimes offering quiet nods of solidarity, other times whispering words like brave and resilient as if we were war survivors walking among civilians. Eliza hated the attention at first, her shoulders tensing whenever someone approached, but over time, she began to understand that the world had seen her, not as broken or burdensome, but as a girl who was failed and then found. Her therapy continued twice a week, and the nightmares slowly lessened. She began to sleep with her door closed again. She returned to her school photography club and led a project titled Visible, where students captured self-portraits without faces, focusing instead on symbols that defined their inner strength. Her photograph was of her worn-out camera, resting beside a copy of her temporary Cravovian passport. It won first prize. She accepted the award in front of an auditorium full of applause, her hands steady, her voice clear. As for me, I filed for legal restructuring of Eliza's last name. Coleman would remain as a legal record, but her formal name would carry my maiden name too, Eliza Hart Coleman. It was a symbolic gesture, yes, but necessary. She was no longer someone's obligation or embarrassment. She was her own person, carried forward by love, not lineage. I declined all offers for media interviews. This wasn't a story to be sold. It was something sacred. But I did agree to speak at a private panel hosted by a trauma-informed parenting conference. There, I met dozens of mothers, biological, adoptive, step, who had experienced similar betrayals from those closest to them. It was like walking into a circle of quiet warriors. We didn't speak of revenge. We spoke of repair. The Eliza Project, to my astonishment, grew faster than we could accommodate. We partnered with schools, shelters, and even embassies to create a protocol for teens left abroad during family travel. We built a digital alert tool that helped minors send coded messages to pre-approved contacts if they were ever in distress. By the end of the first year, we had helped 6 young people reconnect with safe adults and escape situations that mirrored Eliza's in chilling detail. Some called it activism. I called it motherhood extended. One rainy afternoon, nearly a year after the Cracovia incident, I received a handwritten letter on crisp ivory stationery. The envelope was unmarked except for my name. Inside was one sentence, written in Diana's looping cursive. I failed you both, and for that, I carry shame. No signature, no return address. I didn't reply. I didn't frame it or throw it away. I tucked it into Eliza's journal, where she had written the full story of what happened in Cracovia. In her own words, on her own terms. Not for public display, just for record. She titled the entry, "The Day I Knew Who My Mother Really Was." And in the months after, I knew who I was too. Not just a communications director, not just a widow, not just someone who endured polite cruelty for the sake of keeping family peace. I was the woman who got on a plane without a plan and found her daughter in a concrete waiting room half a world away. I was the one who faced cold judgment, who recorded a conversation that made 1,000 other daughters feel less alone. I was the one who said, loudly and unapologetically, that love without dignity is not love at all. And I was the one who stayed. That summer, Eliza and I repainted our small apartment, changing the beige walls to soft sage and deep navy. She hung prints of her work in the hallway. I ordered us matching mugs that read "Not fragile, just fierce." We hosted our first visible garden event for teens in recovery, an open-air art exhibit in the public park featuring silent photography, spoken word, and live acoustic music. Eliza gave a quiet speech under the twinkle lights strung across the trees. "Sometimes we don't get to choose the family we're born into," she said, holding her camera in one hand, "but we can choose the story we tell next." Applause followed, but I didn't clap. I just watched her, standing in front of 50 people, chin lifted slightly, eyes focused and calm. She wasn't the girl I kissed goodbye in Connecticut. She wasn't the girl huddled at a train station in Cracovia. She was a young woman reclaiming space she had been denied. After the event, she leaned into my side and said, "I don't think I ever said thank you." "You don't have to," I replied. "But I'll say it anyway. Thank you for surviving." We walked home through the city, the air warm, the world unchanged and yet completely different. And somewhere between the streetlights and the laughter, I realized something I hadn't dared admit out loud until then. The worst moment of our lives, the abandonment, the humiliation, the terror, had not broken us. It had revealed us. To anyone reading this, especially if you've been told that your softness is weakness or your child is a burden, know this. The world will try to shame you for protecting the vulnerable. Let it. Protect them anyway. Speak up anyway. Show up anyway. Because the moment you stop asking for approval from those who treat love like a transaction, you make room for something better. Something lasting. Something real. Blood may connect us, but only love sustains us. And love, when chosen and defended, becomes the truest kind of legacy.